إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ومن اتبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد, to proceed to continue our explanation of the book ثلاثة الأصول by Shaykh Imam Muhammad ibn Abd-ul-Wahab رحمه الله. And we've completed the first section, وَلِلَّهِ الْحَمْدِ. And we completed it with the dalil, the evidence that it is obligatory upon us to learn those four matters: knowledge, which relates to Allah, His Messenger and His Deen, acting in accordance to it, meaning implementing it, then calling the people to it, and then being patient, as-sabru ala al-adha fihi, upon the harm that you will experience when you follow this way. And we mentioned that the author, rahimahullah, he presented the dalil, the evidence for those four matters. And it is right, the great surah Al-Asr, where Allah Azza wa Jalla, He took an oath by time, Wal-Asr. So He introduced the surah subhanahu wa ta'ala by an oath with time. Why? Because Allah Azza wa Jalla created time. And by time, its passage day and night, we experience what we do in the life of this dunya. And how many people, as we mentioned, they waste their time in the life of this dunya seeking it and not pursuing that which is more beneficial. Which is why Allah Azza wa Jalla said, Innal insana lafi khusr, that indeed all of mankind are in loss. Lafi khusr, in manifest loss. Illa alladhina amanu, except those who have al-iman. And we mentioned that al-iman is all of those matters that relate to faith. It is not only that you believe that Allah exists. And why is that not the definition of al-iman, that we believe that Allah Azza wa Jalla exists? Why is it not restricted to that? How do we know that?
Actions.
Actions? What about actions?
I'm getting mixed up here.
No, but the mushrikun, the pagan Arabs who worshipped idols, did they believe that Allah Azza wa Jalla exists?
Yes.
Yes. Not only did they believe that Allah exists, they believed that Allah created them and created the heavens and the earth. وَلَئِن سَأَلْتَهُمْ مَنْ خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ لَيَقُولُنَّ Allah. If you ask them, who created the heavens and the earth? Indeed, they will say, Allah. وَلَئِن سَأَلْتَهُمْ مَنْ خَلَقَهُمْ. And if you ask them, who created them? لَيَقُولُنَّ Allah. Indeed, they will say Allah. So they affirmed that not only does Allah exist, but that also He created them and created the heavens and the earth. But were they mu'minun? No. Because al-iman is believing more than that just Allah Azza wa Jalla exists. It is to believe in His angels and His books and so on and so forth. And in addition to that, it is to affirm the tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jalla. And it is not to worship anything other than Allah. And from al-iman is that you have tawakkul in only Allah. And you have hope only in Allah. And you fear only Allah Azza wa Jalla. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ عَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. the ones who perform good deeds. And what is the definition of a good deed in the Sharia, in Al-Islam? What is the definition of a good deed?
You have intention and for the sake of Allah, and you do it according to the Sunnah.
Right, two fundamental principles. No deed can ever be considered to be Salih except and unless it has been performed sincerely for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jalla, and thereafter it is in accordance with the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So a person therefore who adheres to the way that the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam performed the prayer in its entirety, so they stand completely straight with al-khashu, and they look at the position of sujood, and they concentrate upon their words, and they do all of these actions, and when they go on ruku, they go in such a manner that their back is completely straight, so if you were to pour water on top, it would stay there, as the hadith states how straight the back was. If he was to do all of this perfectly, but he did it because somebody was watching him, and he saw him as he entered the masjid, and he's observing him and watching him, and he realizes that so-and-so is watching me, so I am going to perfect my prayer. I'm going to perform it in the most complete manner, because afterwards he's going to say, I saw so-and-so enter the masjid and perform the prayer, as people do, and mashallah, he did this and this. And that person became happy. That person, his action is not considered to be salih, rather it will be rejected. Taraktuhu wa shirkahu, as Allah Azza wa Jalla said in the Hadith Qudsi, I've abandoned him and his act of shirk. Similarly, a person, he performs that deed and he does it sincerely for the sake of Allah. He's seeking nobody's pleasure other than Allah Azza wa Jalla. He's seeking by that his reward to meet him on Yawm al-Qiyamah. But the action that he does has no basis in the deen of Allah. Like the famous incident when Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anh was told by Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, the narration is lengthy, but to summarize, they saw a group of people in a masjid in Iraq. They were sat in circles and they were counting takbir and tasbih on stones, doing it one after the next. So Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anh, he asked them what they were doing, and the first thing that they said is, Ma nuridu illa al-khair. Ma nuridu illa al-khair, that we do not want or intend except good. Right? That's what they said. That all we're trying to do is something good. Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anh said those famous words, وَكَمْ مِن مُرِيدٍ لِلْخَيْرِ لَا يَبْلُغُ. How many people intend good, لَا يَبْلُغُ, but they never reach that good. They never reach it. So what's interesting from the statement of Ibn Mas'ud is he never said to them, no, you're not intending good. You're not intending good. You never did that for the sake of Allah. Why did he not say that to them? Why did he not say, no, you never intended the face of Allah? Why?
He doesn't have that knowledge. Right,
because Allah said, إِنَّهُ عَلِيمٌ بِذَاتِ الصُّدُورِ. Only Allah knows that which is in the hearts. يَوْمَ تُبْلَ السَّرَائِرِ. Allah Azza wa Jalla said, on Yawm al-Qiyamah, as-sara'ir, the secret matters in your heart will be tested. وَحُصِّلَ مَا فِي الصُّدُورِ. And that which is in your heart will become manifest, meaning only Allah Azza wa Jalla knows that. Only Allah knows what's in the hearts of people. So it wasn't for Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anh or Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiyallahu anhuma to say, no, you never intended Allah. But he did say, كَم مِن مُرِيدٍ لِلْخَيْرِ لَا يَبْلُغُ. How many people intend good but never reach that good? It's as though, if we were to think about it, visualize it, here is a niyyah, intention, al-ikhlas. It begins here. right? Your action is over here. In order for you to do a correct action according to the Sunnah, you've got to get here with a sincere intention. He said, "Kam min muridin lil khair." How many people intend good? So they begin here and they intend good, la yablughu, but they never get to that point. They never arrive there. Why? Because they go off at a tangent. The tangent is that they do an action which is not in accordance with the Sunnah. That's the problem. So they never get to that point. That's from the one of the many benefits of that lengthy narration that we'll discuss in more detail, inshallah ta'ala, that he never said, no, you don't intend good. But what he did say is that you've not reached that good because you've done an action that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam never did. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. And then they invite and encourage one another with the truth, which is very important because Allah Azza wa Jalla said, "Kuntum khayru ummatin ukhrijat linnas." You are the best people who we have taken from the people. Why? تَأْمَرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَتَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَتُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ. You are the best people. Why? Because you are the ones who enjoin the good, you command the good and you forbid the evil. وَتُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ. And you believe in Allah. So when you invite one another to the truth, then not only are you encouraging people to go to the masjid and pray, and encouraging people to pay their zakat and to fast in Ramadan, but at the same time, that's the good that you're commending. At the same time, you are forbidding the evil. And what is the greatest evil that a person can forbid? That a person associates partners with Allah. Why? Because in Allah la yaghfiru an yushraka bihi wa yaghfiru ma duna dhalika liman yasha. Twice Allah Azza wa Jalla said that Allah does not forgive a person who commits shirk with him. Other than that, Allah will forgive everything. So the greatest matters that you can forbid is a shirk and al-kufr and bid'ah, which is what we do. Warn the people not to perform actions in opposition to the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. And then you encourage and invite one another with the truth, with patience. Why? Because you're going to experience a degree of harm when you follow this way. As we know, there was no prophet or messenger who came to his people, commanded them with the good and forbade the evil, except that they were subjected to some kind of abuse from their people, or Allah Azza wa Jalla tested them with matters in the decree that was difficult in a trial. So the obligation upon a believer is to encourage and invite his fellow believing brothers and sisters to be patient upon that. And that's the dalil, the evidence that the author rahimahullah mentioned for those four matters. After that he mentioned another dalil, and that is the statement of al-Bukhari rahimahullah, babun al-qawlu al-ilmu qabla al-qawli wal-amal. Babun al-ilmu qabla al-qawli wal-amal. Chapter relating to knowledge before statement and action. Meaning a person has to have knowledge before they make a statement upon their tongue or they perform an action. وَدَلِيلُ. And the evidence for that is the ayah in Surah Muhammad, فَعَلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لِذَنْبِكَ. فَعَلَمْ. Have knowledge of this statement, لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. So from an early age, when usually it's our mother who first teaches us, and they say, they call it Bella Qalma, right? That's what they call it, Bella Qalma, don't they? The first kalima, the first statement, testimony of faith. We're taught that from an early age. But Allah Azza wa Jalla said, فَعَلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Have knowledge that there is no ilah except Allah Azza wa Jalla. La ilaha illallah. First there's a negation that there is no ilah. Then there's an affirmation meaning except Allah Azza wa Jalla. And the meaning of that in summary is that there is no God who is deserving of being worshipped in truth except Allah Azza wa Jalla. Thereafter in today's lesson we continue with the next statement of the author rahimahullah when he said i'lam rahimakallah. So again he started with have knowledge, may the mercy of Allah be upon you, أنه يجب على كل مسلم ومسلمة تعلم ثلاث هذه المسائل والعمل بهن. That it is obligatory upon every Muslim, male and female, to learn 3 of these matters and to act in accordance to them. Right? So the next section, the author rahimahullah mentions some other matter which is obligatory upon every Muslim, male and female. And we've already mentioned in our introduction that talabatul ilm faridatun ala kulli Muslim, that to seek knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned. The first, al-ula anna Allah khalaqana, the first is that Allah azza wa jalla khalaqana, He created us. And this is a great matter, isn't it? Anna Allah khalaqana, that Allah, He created us. Why is this so important? Because we live in a time in which we've seen the appearance of what we call militant atheism. Militant atheism is a type of ideology in which people who disbelieve in Allah as Al-Khaliq, the Creator, have to now explain how the universe and creation has come into existence, right? If you deny Al-Khaliq, the Creator, then part of their belief or their religion is that they have to explain, so how did a human being come into existence? Rather, how did this universe come into existence? And the hypothesis that they follow, or the theory that they've introduced, is, as you know, the theory of evolution. And this is very important now to discuss this. Why? Because many Muslims who, particularly those who live in the West, they feel under an obligation to accommodate or try and make sense of evolution with regards to Islamic principles. They feel under an obligation to do this because militant atheism states that if you deny evolution, which they say is a fact, right? It's an irrefutable, undisputed fact that no sensible, rational person can argue against. They will say that if you deny this and you believe in, as they say, this great fairy in the sky, wal-iyadhan billah, then you're some kind of subhuman being, that your intellect somehow is deficient, that you're mentally unstable. How can you deny something that's been scientifically proven for so many years and believe in something that you can't see? So there are Muslims today who, as a result of being subjected to this militant atheism and this aggressive promotion of evolution, that they feel now under an obligation to try and explain that in an Islamic manner. So there's one particular individual from London, your neck of the woods, Muhammad, from Leighton, whose father was the Imam of the Masjid. He wrote an article several years ago now, and it was published in The Guardian. And he explained that, and I had to read it several times because I could scarcely believe that he was now arguing this point. And the reason being because I've known him since when I was at Leeds University in the 90s. I've known him since then. And he used to come, and what was interesting is his article was speaking about the creation of a human being as explained in Al-Quran, particularly Surah Al-Baqarah, when Allah Azza wa Jalla, you know, the ayah that we've been reading since we're children, where Allah Azza wa Jalla said to Al-Malaika, Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa, I'm going to place upon this earth a khalifa, a representative, or somebody who his descendants will live. There's different understandings of a khalifa, but the point is, I'm going to place upon this earth my representative. And he said, quote, I'll never forget what he said. He was arguing that we have to explain evolution in an Islamic we have to accept it and incorporate it into our teaching. And he said we have to, quote, move away from this childlike madrasa explanation of how a human being originated. We have to move away from that. I had to read the article several times because I could scarcely believe that the same person who used to come and give lectures on the prophets, beginning with Adam alayhi salam, that now 25 years later or 20 years later, he was now arguing the opposite. I could scarcely believe that. Anyway, apparently afterwards, as a result of all the opposition he received and his subsequent expulsion from the mosque and his father, apparently he's now retracted that position. But Allahu Alam, he will be held accountable on Yawm al-Qiyamah for what he said. But the point is, it's interesting to note that him and the other individual, like Suhail Ahmed, the other person from London who used to say that when I was at university, they called me Shaykh al-Islam, and because I was so knowledgeable and wise about the deen. And then I read a book on evolution, and that book on evolution made me question my faith, and as a consequence apparently he's apostated, and then explained also that I have homosexual tendencies and so on and so forth. But his story is well known. But the point is that these two individuals will not be the only examples of people who now, because of this method that they've introduced, where they're arguing that if you reject what we consider to be a fact, and you follow something that we consider to be fiction, something made up, then somehow you're subhuman, or your intellectual ability is somehow deficient. Right. So what do we say? We say, أَنَّ اللَّهَ خَلَقَنَا, that Allah Azza wa Jalla, He created us. Right? How do we know that Allah Azza wa Jalla, He created us? We know from two methods. One, from His revelation, and the second from the intellect. And we're going to discuss both. So in relation to the revelation, Allah Azza wa Jalla said in Surah Dhariyat, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I did not create mankind nor jinn except for my worship. So who was the first person whom Allah Azza wa Jalla created? Adam alayhi salam. Right? He is the first human being. How do we know this? Because Allah Azza wa Jalla said to the Malaika, and Iblis was there. Right? Rather, Allah said to the Malaika that إِنِّي جَائِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً, that I'm going to place upon this earth a Khalifa. And when Allah created Adam alayhi salam, He made the Malaika, and Iblis was there, and He made them perform sujood to Adam alayhi salam. فَسَجَدُوا, then they all performed sujood except Iblis. Except Iblis. أَبَى وَاسْتَكْبَرَ, he refused out of arrogance, and he was amongst the kafirin, those who disbelieved. But if we go back, when Allah Azza wa Jalla created Adam, He did so out of teen, out of clay. He created Adam alayhi salam out of clay with His own two hands. And the dalil which is clear for that is in Surah Sad, where Allah Azza wa Jalla, He addressed Iblis, Ya Iblisu, ma mana'aka an tasjuda lima khalaqtu biyadayya. He said, O Iblis, what prevented you from performing sujood, prostrating to what I created with my two hands? And it's very interesting, and now it's not really the time to discuss this in detail, but it's very interesting to note that Allah Azza wa Jalla, when He addressed Iblis, He never said, لِمَنْ خَلَقْتُ بِيَدَيَّ, to who I created with my two hands. He said, to what I created with my two hands. Right? He never said liman, he said lima. And that's very important. Why? Because in Arabic grammar, liman is used for an aqil, a human being. Lima is used for an object. Allah is referring to Adam alayhi salam, but he's using the term that is normally applied to something which is an object. Why?
The soul was in there.
Because what?
The soul was in there.
No. Because Allah is addressing Iblis and directing his attention to how Adam was created. What was unique, what was special about Adam alayhi salam, that he alone has that particular characteristic, that Allah created him with his own two hands. لِمَا خَلَقْتُ بِيَدَيَّ. Which is why when Iblis responded, right, he never made any reference to that. He said, أَسْجُدُ لِمَنْ خَلَقْتَ طِينًا. He said, should I prostrate? He did use liman, to who you created from clay. Should I now prostrate to that person who you created from clay? Why? Because he didn't want to make reference to how Allah created him. He just wanted to make reference to who Allah created. Right? Because he said, أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِنْهُ خَلَقْتَنِي مِنْ نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِنْ طِينٍ. He said, I'm better than him. You created me from fire and you created him from clay. So we know that Allah Azza wa Jalla created Adam alayhi salam with his own two hands, and he created him from clay, and he was the first of creation, and from him he created his wife Hawa alayhi salam. Right? That is what we know for absolute certainty, right? As established in the book of Allah Azza wa Jalla. Now, a person may say, but I'm not made of clay, right? And they will say this. The rejectionists, right? Those who have denied and disbelieved in Allah Azza wa Jalla, will say, well, okay, if Allah created Adam from clay, and he created his wife Hawa from his upper rib, as the hadith states, then we are created from what? The amalgamation of the egg from a woman and the sperm from a human, a man. That's how our existence comes into operation. So we said that yes, initially Allah Azza wa Jalla did decree that Adam would be created from clay and Hawa from his upper rib. But then Allah said, وَبَثَّ in Surah An-Nisa, وَبَثَّ مِنْهُمَا رِجَالًا كَثِيرًا وَنِسَاءً. From the two, many other men and women have come. And in Surah Al-Hajj, Allah Azza wa Jalla said, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ إِن كُنْتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ مِّنَ الْبَعْثِ فَإِنَّا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ مِنْ تُرَابٍ ثم من نطفة ثم من علقة ثم من مضغة مخلقة وغير مخلقة. O mankind, if you have any doubt regarding the resurrection, then know that we created you from turab, from soil. ثم من نطفة, then a single drop. Right? So Allah Azza wa Jalla has affirmed in the book that yes, initially a human being was created from clay, from the soil, from the earth. But after that, the nature of his creation changed to what? Min nutfatin, from a single drop. Thumma min alaqatin, then what does it become? Alaqatin means a blood clot, right? So after the amalgamation of the drop and the egg, a human being is initially a blood clot. Thumma mudghatin, then a piece of flesh. Mukhallaqatin wa ghayri mukhallaqatin. So if you look at the different stages of the embryo and its development, then it's known that initially it looks like a piece of flesh which has been chewed, right? And like when you have a piece of bubble gum, a large piece, and you chew on it, and then you look at it like you used to when you were a kid, and not that you do that now, but when you were a kid, and there's that groove, isn't there, which your teeth has made. So Allah Azza wa Jalla said that it is like that, right? Then it stays in the womb for a period of time. ثُمَّ نُخْرِجُكُمْ طِفْلًا, then we take you out as a child. ثم لتبلغوا أشدكم, then you become older. ومنكم من يتوفى, and then there are those amongst you who die. ومنكم من يرد إلى أرذل العمر, then there are those amongst you who stay until you are old, and you lose your senses, you become mentally deficient. So Allah Azza wa Jalla explained, and similarly in Surah Nur, the different stages of the development of a human being. That initially, yes, Adam alayhi salam was made out of clay, but then his descendants, we are now made out of flesh and blood and so on and so forth. So we don't deny that that has changed. That's clearly apparent, and it's affirmed by the texts. Now, there are many evidences that prove that. So all that we need to do is reflect upon Al-Quran and the Sunnah, and we know that Allah Azza wa Jalla is the creator. In fact, that's part of affirming the rububiyyah of Allah. When Allah said, Inna rabbakum Allahu alladhi khalaqa as-samawati wal ardi fi sittati ayyamin thumma istawa ala al-arsh, that your Lord is Allah who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, then he ascended above the throne. Yughshi layla nahara yatlubu hathitha, the night and day follows one another very quickly. وَسَخَّرَ الشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمْرَ وَالنُّجُومَ وَالشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمْرَ وَالنُّجُومَ مُسَخَّرَاتٍ بِأَمْرِهِ, and the sun and the moon and the stars are subservient to his command. Right? أَلَا لَهُ الْخَلْقُ وَالْأَمْرُ, is not al-khalq, the creation and the command, for Allah alone. Tabarakallahu Rabbul Alameen. So blessed is He, Rabbul Alameen. So from Allah being a Rabb and Him having the attribute of Rububiyyah, Lordship, is that He is Al-Khaliq, besides whom there is no Khaliq. Which is why in Arabic that verb khalaqa isn't used except for Allah Azza wa Jalla, because He's the only one who can bring into existence something that prior to that it didn't exist. Right. From that we have this other point, and that is when in Surah Dhariyat Allah Azza wa Jalla said, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, that I did not create men nor jinn except for my worship. That's another evidence that Allah created us, but it's more than that. It gives a human being a sense of purpose. It gives an individual a function in this dunya, and that's important. Why? Because many people, particularly those who are a bit more learned and educated in the ways of the world, they find it difficult to believe that this existence is present without a purpose. They find it inconceivable that you can go through life and you can live and you become older and then you die and then there's no purpose to that existence at all. They find that very difficult, which is why so many people commit suicide. How can there be a life in which you experience that which you do through the passage of time, and then after that there's no purpose or benefit to it all? Very few people will honestly, sincerely say, well, that's all right, because that for most people is futile. Allah Azza wa Jalla explained why He created us, in order to worship Him. And this is explained in greater detail in the book. But the point to note is, at this stage, is that there is a function for our existence. It's not only for the purpose of eating, drinking, and procreating, and then dying. Rather, it's liya'budun. That is why a person whose heart does not know Allah, who does not know its Lord, that person will never be content. Even if he's surrounded by the luxuries of this world, even if he's surrounded by everything he can have in a materialistic sense, that person will never be content until his heart knows its Lord. So many people are depressed and they suffer from anxiety and stress and mental health issues, and many of these reasons are because of a sense of worthlessness and hopelessness and a sense of having no purpose in their life. If you speak to many of these medical practitioners, GPs, who are visited by even academically or in terms of materialistically successful people, and they'll talk about their depression, and it will be because they will admit there doesn't seem to be any purpose to my existence. There's a hadith Sahih in Bukhari and Muslim, narrated by Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anh, where the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, بينما رجل يسوق بقرة له. Whilst a person from the people came before, he was leading his cow. He had a cow. He was leading it like people do. فَرَقِبَهَا. In one narration in Bukhari it says فَرَقِبَهَا. In narration Muslim it says فَحَمِلَ عَلَيْهَا. Then he got on top of it to ride it. Right? So the cow التفت إليه. The cow turned to him and said, the cow spoke and said, مَا خُلِقْنَا لِهَذَا, or مَا خُلِقْتُ لِهَذَا, or لَمْ أُخْلَقْ لِهَذَا, depending upon the ratio. Meaning, we were not created for this, or I was not created for this. إِنَّمَا خُلِقْتُ لِلْحَرْثِ. I was created for agriculture. Right? When that cow spoke to that person and told him, no, I'm not for riding, you don't ride upon a cow, and said rather it's for agriculture, the cow knows its purpose. Which is why when in Surah Taha Fir'aun said to Musa, وَمَا رَبُّكُمَا يَا Musa, who is your Lord, O Musa? قَالَ رَبِّيَ الَّذِي أَعْطَى كُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلْقَهُ ثُمَّ هَدَى. He said, my Lord is the one who gave to creation all that it needs, then it guided it for its purpose. It told it what to do, right? Everybody, everything in creation has a purpose and a function decreed by Allah Azza wa Jalla, including a human being, and that is liya'budun, to worship Allah. So now a person says, right, okay, when you're praying and fasting, and when you're paying your zakat, and when you're performing Hajj and Umrah, then that's worship, right? What about the rest of the time? There's two types of worship. There's one which is a specific act of worship, such as those that I mentioned, and then there's general worship. What's general worship? General worship, for example, a person who works. If a person works, and it's an obligation upon a human being, particularly a male Muslim, to work, if a person does that, intending by the face of Allah, seeking His pleasure, intending by that to earn a halal income in order to feed his family, to clothe and shelter his family, and in order to help the other people to pay zakat and sadaqah. If a person works for that reason, then for that action they will be rewarded for, right? Because حتى ما تجعل في امرأتك, the Prophet ﷺ said, you're going to be rewarded for everything you do sincerely for the sake of Allah, even that which you place in the mouth of your wife, meaning that which you feed your family with. And it's an obligation upon you to feed your family. It's an obligation, right? But if you do it sincerely, seeking the face of Allah, then you're rewarded for it. If a person sleeps, even sleeping, and he does it with the intention of recovering, right, having being refreshed, full of vitality for the morning, so he can pray, and then he can go and seek his rizq from Allah and help creation. If a person sleeps for that reason, then even that he'll be rewarded for. Which is why Allah said, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I did not create men nor jinn except for my worship. There's two types. There's the one which is specific, and then there's the one that's general. Which is why a niyyah is so important. Being sincere is so important, having al-ikhlas. Because if you have al-ikhlas in your intention before every action, then you can be rewarded even for eating and drinking. Right? So in terms of the intellect, how do we know that Allah Azza wa Jalla created us? Right, if we take an object like this book, right, we have this book in front of us. Even though, let's say, and I don't know who produced this book, I don't know who manufactured it, I don't know where this paper came from, where, or the trees that they cut down to produce this paper. I don't know which printer printed this text. I don't know who bound it or who glued the front. I don't know anything of this. But I do know that somebody did it. Right? Because now, if you were to enter this room and you found this book on the floor and you asked, where did that come from? And I said, well, it just appeared. Or I said that it was a random occurrence. It was purely coincidental that that book appeared here in this room. Right? In Arabic it's called a sadafa. Purely a random incident. You would say that certainly you've taken leave of your senses, right? You would say that you've gone, that either you're a liar, or if you're less charitable, something more harsh. That's what you would say, right? If I told you that this just appeared or came into existence and that's how it happened without any human interaction or intervention, you would say that clearly you've taken leave of your senses, right? That's what you would say. Now, when they say that this universe came into existence as a result of a series of random occurrences that were not organized, that were purely coincidental, then you're in effect saying the same thing. But it's more than that. It's not just a book with pages and text and a cover that needs binding and gluing, but this universe and everything that it contains and the way that it operates with such harmony and perfection, and then the human beings who walk upon this earth, and the animals and the birds in the sky and the fish in the sea and the insects and all of these things, for it to operate in the manner that it does, and everything going about its function seemingly as though it knows what to do, for all of that to just be a random, purely a coincidence, then that's absolutely absurd. It is inconceivable that that could have happened purely in a random manner. Now, the great scholar of atheism, Richard Dawkins, who's like their alama, their great scholar, he's the foremost evolutionary biologist of our time. Or as somebody at once said, he's a very angry man. Right? He was a non-Muslim who said it. He is a person who said he is our representative, right? He's like the Pope for Catholics. And I may have mentioned this before, but I'll say it in brief, that I wanted to understand how he explains the evolution of the eye. This organ that we use in order to see, right? It's not just a piece of flesh, right? Or a grape that if you pop it's going to just disappear or disintegrate. This has so many different components, such as the lens and the iris and the cornea and a pupil and the tear gland, right? And it works so perfectly in such a harmonious manner that I wanted to understand how could they explain that that's just as a series of random mutations over millions of years. How does that happen? I want to understand. So I watched it. In fact, I watched it twice, right? So he's addressing his followers. They're all there in this lecture theatre, and he explains how the eye evolved from the earliest forms to the form that we have today. And he started by saying that, first of all, there was an indentation that appeared on the forehead. Right? Whose forehead we don't know. But the point is, there was a forehead, i.e. this part, and there was an indent. Everyone understands what indentation. There's an impression, right? Just like the eye socket, right? So that first appeared. Okay, and it got deeper and deeper and deeper. Then a single photosensitive cell appeared on it. A single photosensitive cell. Why photosensitive cell? Because that's the type of cell that reacts to light. Right? You need something that's going to react to light. Skin obviously doesn't. If you put Even though it does in the sense, because you can sense when it's hot, can't you, when the sun's shining on your hand. But that single photosensitive cell appeared upon the forehead. And everybody sat there saying, oh. And then after that, another one appeared. And another one. And they carried on appeared until you had a group of them together. And everyone's like, you know, it's the equivalent when you have some of these gatherings and they say, oh, you know, mashallah. They're all really happy. And I was thinking, well, how would that have happened? How could you have a situation where they could all have come together and just appeared at that point, right? But anyway, no. Then after that, after these purely random occurrences that were not in any way they weren't caused to appear in that fashion, there was no one organising it, then after that you had a lens appearing. And again, that's a type of cell. So the lens appears on top of the photosensitive cells. And it just so happened to appear there. So it didn't appear somewhere else in the forehead. It didn't appear where the ear was, or the nose, or the cheek. No, it happened to appear on top of it. And it carries on like this. So at every development of the eye, you've just got to accept that that's where it appeared, and at that time, and it just so happened to be the most useful point for it to appear. It's most going to be most beneficial there. You've just got to accept it, as they did. They just accepted it, that's how it is. And then at the end, there'll be this summary, which is, look, it's like when you scale a mountain, right? When you're at the foot of the mountain, you look at the peak, you think that's a long way up, how will I ever get there? But if you take it one step at a time, and even if it's thousands and thousands of steps and you get to the summit, and then you look down, then you realise you made it. But it was all these individual steps that you had to follow to get to the top. So they said, don't dwell upon these individual stages of the evolution of the eye. Look at it from the perspective that you're already there, you've got your eye, and work backwards. So Allah Azza wa Jalla said, Am khuliku min ghayri shay'in am humul khaliqun. Allah said, He addressed this absurdity in Surah Tur. Am khuliku min ghayri shay'in. Were they created from or by nobody? Am humul khaliqun, or are they the ones who are the creators? Allah Azza wa Jalla said, so were they, these individuals who are now denying al-Khaliq, am khuliqu min ghayri shay'in, were they created by no one? Like the example of the book, did that just come into existence by itself? No sensible person would ever say that, nor did they say it about anything in the dunya, right? Nobody says it. Am khuliqu min ghayri shay'in. Or were they themselves their own creators? Was this book its own creator? Was a human being its own creator? Whoever argues that, who advances that as a reason for their existence? Nobody does, right? So therefore, we affirm the existence of Al-Khaliq, the creator. Now, when I was discussing this once at work, he accepted that. The person who I was speaking to, he said, okay, accept that everything has to have a creator. Alright? That these things that are around us, they just don't come into existence by them. We accept that. So now explain the origin of Allah Azza wa Jalla then. Well, it never said Azza wa Jalla, but they said explain the origin of your Lord. Now, at this point, a person needs to understand that Allah said, وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْإِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. You were only given a small amount of knowledge. And we've been obligated to act in accordance to what we know. Right? And Allah told us, لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. لَمْ يَلِدْ, He doesn't give birth to anybody. وَلَمْ يُولَدْ, nor was He given birth to. Meaning, nobody gave birth to him, right? Which is the reason for Allah's existence. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. And there is nothing like unto Allah. I therefore explained that what we've been obligated with is to recognize that Allah is our creator, and therefore He created us for a purpose, and that purpose, as He informed us, is to worship Him. That is where the Salaf, the companions, stopped at that point, right? So what I mean by that is, if you walk into this room and you see this book, right, and you don't know where this book has come from, right? You don't know who made this book. You don't know who published this book. You don't know who printed it. You don't know who compiled it. But what do you know? You know that somebody did, right? You know that somebody did. It didn't just bring itself into existence. So at the very least, without having any prior knowledge of how this book appeared in this room, you're going to believe that somebody brought it, right? And somebody published this book. That's what you're going to believe. Somebody did it. Now, if I tell you that I brought this book, and this is a book that I bought when I was in Saudi Arabia, and the publisher is Darul Tharaya. Now you know who brought this book, who bought it, and who published it. Now you know that much. So you have some more information regarding the origin of this book, right? Similarly, Allah Azza wa Jalla told us that He created us, and He told us why He created us, and He sent down prophets and messengers, and He revealed books, all for our guidance. So we stop where Allah Azza wa Jalla stopped with regards to what He obligated upon us, and we don't go beyond that, right? So not being able to answer something beyond what we know isn't a reason to reject what we know. You understand? If you can't explain who brought this book into the room, but you know somebody did, the fact that you don't know who brought it, you're not going to deny that somebody did. Do you understand? The absence of complete knowledge regarding this book isn't going to cause you to reject what you can see with your own eyes. Similarly, Allah said, as we said, Allah said, وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. You've only been given a small amount of knowledge. It's inconceivable that a human being was ever going to encompass the knowledge of Allah Azza wa Jalla, or His creation. So what we know up to this point in the life of the dunya is that Allah created us, and He explained why He did it. And we know that we're going to be held accountable for what we did in the life of this world on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Therefore, we're obligated to correct our actions and ensure that our belief and practice is in accordance with the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we shall conclude on that point, and we'll continue in our next lesson, inshaAllah ta'ala. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.